Like, this is one of the things that's interesting. People have had this question me like, Chewy, don't you think they should get rid of the belts? Because wouldn't it be a better thing to just focus on technique alone rather than focus on belts, right? And I would agree with them. The only thing that I find useful for the belts is, one, I think it's very useful for competition purposes. While there isn't a specific thing that we all go behind and divide it up, generally speaking, with the exception of some sandbaggers when they're around, they've had like a purple belt who's, like been a purple belt for like 7 years or something. And he's won everything. And he's like, just get that guy moving, like, because again, it's like, if you're a hardcore competitor, it doesn't really count until you're like a black belt. Like, it's important and it matters as you're working your way up. But again, we only get so many miles in the body, and you don't want to like spend them forever at that belt, so you got to get things moving. But it is helpful. And most of the time the competitions are competitive and people are pretty good. You can go from one gym to the other and you can typically get a feel for, like yesterday we were rolling at a 10th Planet gym, and I would talk to the guys after done rolling with them, like, how long have you been training? What's your rank and stuff? And I could almost tell them where they were based upon rolling with them. I was like, I bet he's a blue belt. I bet he's a purple belt or white belt or whatever. So it's helpful for that, because otherwise, like, I guess you could go on time, right? Maybe. But then what happens if you're the dude that's been training for like 8 years, but you only come twice a week, and then you go up against this kid who's been there for 3 years and he's going like 7 days a week? Like, you're at a disadvantage, right? Like, that kind of thing. So there's different things. The belt seems to be useful for that division, like as far as like skills and stuff like that. Not necessarily has to be done. You can always go on time based and everything else. And I think that it's useful for division amongst students sometimes, with just as you're, bringing them up, just like you look in like just different organizations. Most organizations have a hierarchy that people work up, right? It's not just two ranks, like in the military. It's not just like, all right, there's a private and there's a general, right? Like, it's like, there's things you got to work up and you have to go through. There's even a corporate structure. There are, everything down from like the front end, like customer service person, to the back end managers and supervisors, and you work up, it's like you have a structure there. And I think the structure can be useful for people. Again, I don't think it's the wisest thing to place the utmost focus on it, but I think it's useful. I think that the toughest part about it is that there isn't uniformity to it, and people crave that uniformity, right? Like, people want to know, what do I need to do to get this belt, right? Like, they want to know. It's hard to tell them sometimes, because like I've gotten it to the point where like now it's a little bit more structured with us. Not necessarily specifically what they need to do, but there's a little bit more structure with time requirements and stuff, and having stripe and belt promotions and stuff like that on specific days, just so people don't fall the cracks. But a lot of people, they experience frustration because they don't have the understanding, what am I supposed to do? But that's a talk for another time.
I do like that there's a lot of variability. I kind of like the fact that there isn't a set structure to the belts. I think sometimes it adds a little bit of a surprise to it, which I think can be special. But also, like, every gym and every coach has a little different standard. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
It can be.
I think it adds some, uniqueness to each gym as well. But I think sometimes the belts are good. It's just a way to recognize people too, in a way. It's like good to feel like if you're working really hard and just feeling like you're getting recognized for doing it. Like, sometimes you'll say, during a practice, you'll say, so-and-so's good at this and so-and-so's good at that, and they do this really well. And if you hear your name and you say that, it actually gives you a little jolt of energy.
Sure, you've been acknowledged. I mean, that's why the bits of ribbon were so important. Acknowledgement.
And so you feel like, wow, like they're noticing, and I am progressing. Even though sometimes, like you said, you lost weight and you've done this thing, but your mind still doesn't believe it. But getting that external feedback, whether it's from your coach or your training partners, man, you're getting tough, or you go and you compete and you win. All that stuff is just validation. And I think sometimes we need that. it needs to come internally, but also has to come externally.
Well, everybody wants acknowledgement. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I tend to focus on learning people's first names, because it acknowledges them, right? Like, nobody likes to go into a place and be seen as like insignificant.
Yeah.
Not like, because everyone is like, we are all the most important things in our existence. Each one of us, right? There is nothing more important to you than
we're the center of our universe.
You're the center of your universe, right? So it's not cool to go into a place for a period of time. Maybe in the beginning it's understandable, but it's not fun to go into a place and completely be like ignored. Like, nobody knows my name. Like, I've not been acknowledged, even as a person. Not necessarily for like what the techniques you do, but like, hey, Eugene, like, how's it going today? How you feeling? Right? Like, oh, they knew me. They said my name. It's so powerful. It's one of the things where I think and I've heard people say like, oh, I can't possibly remember people like that. I'm like, yes, you can. Like, of course you can. It's like one of those things as a coach. It's like, it's something you should definitely do, because, I mean, what's more important than those people that are coming in? Like, especially if like you're a gym owner. Like, what's like, you see people that remember the most like unimportant like sports facts, like who fucking played basketball in 1976 and scored. Like, who cares?
Yeah.
Like, if people can remember this, if you can remember someone's first name,
yeah,
it might take a little practice and you'll have to like stretch your mind a little bit sometimes, but it's an important thing to do, because people want to be acknowledged. And so, like belts and stripes and recognition of some sort, all that stuff is acknowledging those people. And it's super, super important, because everybody like, and that's like, people go through life all the time and just having some acknowledgement. This is why, like, different things that we've talked about in this episode, why it's important, and even like people that have been promoted to a new rank. I mean, they've been acknowledged, and, it feels good. They want to be acknowledged again. So they're probably going to, push it a little bit more, that kind of thing, so that kind of thing happens. So it can be a very motivating thing. It can be a very, it can be something that you can drive you at times.
Yeah. And I think you feel valued. You feel like somebody values, your contribution as well, or how hard you work. And I think that's important. It's just important more important to some people than others. Some people are very self, I don't even say motivated, but they're just kind of self-driven. And so having that, some recognition, I think, is especially sometimes when you feel like you're struggling, not even during a belt promotion, even like kind of when you're way between belts, like you're deep into one belt and kind of far away from the next one. It's like, am I getting anywhere? And just knowing, even like getting during training or after a roll, like just hearing that, hearing some positive things is great.
Well, that was like an interesting